Good morning, I'm Diane Smith. Welcome to Capitol Report Morning Update for Friday, May 27th. Thank you for being with us. Here's the latest from the state capitol this morning. The House and Senate will be in session later today. Governor Malloy is required to present his plan to the legislature by Tuesday to fill the estimated $400 million hole in the new state budget, the result of unrealized state employee union concessions. And legislators learned more about Governor Malloy's UConn Health Center Bioscience Initiative during an informational forum yesterday.
Bioscience Connecticut has many components and has the potential to affect change on many levels through research expansion, through talent recruitment, through incubator growth, community service, and improving public health access. Now, an important part of the Bioscience Connecticut plan is to harness the potential of the integrated academic medical center, where research, clinical care, and teaching is done at the same time, to drive research, to drive innovation, to drive technology, and also to drive invention. And these are the tools that Bioscience Connecticut intends to use to propel economic development.
And the truth is that public higher education, I would say for 100 years, has not seen its central mission as economic development of the region or the state. I mean, I think we should be honest about that. And I think it's over the last decade, and especially accelerating the last few years, that people see that's the way it has to be. Of course, we have to educate students, we have to be open to students, we have to provide access, financial aid, but we need to be partners with government, with legislators and governors to help boost the economy, because if the state economies aren't flourishing, the flagships are going nowhere.
I referred earlier today, Senator, to the analysis that was done to support this, the jobs and numbers that show up in the presentation. And I would say that it is, I think, the belief of the folks that did that work that the impact here will not just be in Farmington, Connecticut. The 16,400 jobs that we're talking about, in fact, will help the entire region because companies that get started may not house themselves right there in Farmington, but could be in downtown Hartford, could be in other parts of the state. So I think the analysis itself is a statewide analysis and not just a regional analysis. So I think it's important, and I think, if you look at the details of the presentation and the way that UConn is currently working with these hospitals in downtown Hartford, there's a lot of collaboration between them. I see that this is going to continue in the proposal. And so I actually think this will be a positive for downtown Hartford in the long run.
The question is, will the additional bond funds required to complete this project impact the bond rating of the state of Connecticut? We do not believe that they will have an appreciable impact on the bond rating of the state of Connecticut. We have modeled, in addition to the amount that we authorize for bonding, we also undertake a projection going forward of how much bond funds we will actually spend each year, and based on the timing of these projects and the timing of other projects that we see into the future, we project that we can accommodate this within the level of bonding that we have been doing over the last few years and our plans going into the future.
As for legislative action yesterday, the Senate passed SB 1138, which strengthens the state school bullying laws by including cyberbullying and training provisions. The bill passed on the consent calendar. It heads to the House. The House passed an amended HB 6250, which allows municipal input into the siting of cell phone towers by a vote of 128 to 10. That now goes to the Senate. And the Senate referred SB 1, the Comprehensive Energy Reform Bill, out of the Energy and Technology Committee to the Appropriations Committee, which will be the sixth committee to consider it. They will take that up this morning. Now, as you might guess from the designation of the bill, SB 1, this is a high priority bill, and I will add a comprehensive and rather complex one. Here to explain more about it is Senator John Fonfara, who is the Deputy Majority Leader and the Chair of the Energy and Technology Committee. We were hoping to have Ranking Member Kevin Whitkos with us, too, but his aide called this morning and said that he has an extremely sore throat and is not going to be able to make it in. So, Senator, thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours today.
Thank you for having me, and I'll just say
Pleasure.
that I don't think it was because Senator Whitkos was talking too much last night in session, but actually he and I have and the entire committee have been working very closely together. This is a bipartisan effort, and not only would he be here to give his input, but to, I think, also express his belief in how closely we're working together, his awareness, intelligence on this issue has been tremendous, and we're very grateful for his participation on this.
Senator, this bill, actually, a similar bill came up last year and was passed, but kind of in the very waning hours of the session. How does this one compare with that one? Is it a bit of an outgrowth of that or a continuation?
Very much it is. A lot of the components that were in that bill are in this one. Fundamental differences are, instead of having an energy department created within the DPUC, were the governor's proposal to merge the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Public Utility Control into one. That's a reorganization for efficiencies to a certain extent, but more importantly, for the first time, we'll have a focused effort on energy and trying to reduce costs relating to that, move towards a cleaner energy future, having a extremely talented leader in Dan Esty, someone that could work at any level, part of the energy transition team for the Obama administration.
Right.
We're very fortunate to have him. He's been at the table throughout the process, very engaged, helping us craft an even better bill.
Senator, one of the most common complaints that we hear almost in every subject is that business is hurt, people are hurt by high electric rates in this state. The governor campaigned on the idea of trying to lower electric rates. What would this bill do for me as a consumer?
Well, you've heard this, it's probably a trite term, there is no silver bullet. It's taken us a long time to get into this problem, but we're working to affect that. And this bill will, again, for the first time, have an energy department as opposed to leaving it to the legislature to establish law on this. We're a part-time institution. You'll have a full-time department working on this with a staff. It's a complicated issue. We will, in terms of those that still remain with the utility to have their power provided to them, as opposed to the retail market, we'll be giving those that buy power for the state better tools to buy that. We have some of the more inefficient approaches to how we buy power for consumers.
How do you mean?
Well, they buy in bulk on a 6-month basis. When we first established this, we said blend that over 3 years so that you don't have big jumps in rates.
I see.
And that was good for when price
Volatility.
less volatility. Businesses say we want stability. We did that. And that was great when prices were rising. But when prices are falling, because natural gas
you're
prices,
stuck, right?
You're stuck.
Yeah.
We're still paying part of our electric rates for natural gas, which powers much of our electricity in Connecticut. Natural gas prices from 2 or 3 years ago, when prices were still very high. We're gradually moving down. That's why you've seen this past January prices drop. You'll see this coming January prices drop further. We're becoming more competitive with our surrounding New England states.
We've heard a lot of discussion about how the federal rules restrict the way our electric market works. What do you think needs to be done about that?
It's a huge problem. It's a complicated one, hard for even legislators to get their head around. But what's happening is the federal government has allowed, when we deregulated electricity, the entity that now manages our day-to-day buying and producing of power and determining on a hot day like today how much we need to ensure that the power there aren't brownouts or blackouts. That's a very important component. But the way they determine how generators are compensated, a very complicated process, but the essence of it is this. Those that generate power very efficiently and cheaply, like Millstone, nuclear, which they provide about 40% of our power. They get paid the same amount on a daily basis as the most inefficient, dirtiest producer of electricity on a hot day like today. So instead of us paying Millstone what they need and a little bit of, or even a better than little bit profit, which I think most of us would say yes to, they receive on a hot day like today a windfall because they get paid what the most inefficient plant that gets turned on. And it's a system employed by the regulators that we oppose strongly. I believe the administration opposes strongly. It's going to be a challenge to change it. It's been in place by federal regulators that Congress has supported. We were hoping in the Obama administration that would change. It hasn't. But we have put into our bill requiring the commissioner to go to work on this, to study the impact on rates. We believe it has a substantial impact why Connecticut pays some of the highest rates in the country.
One of the things that we have heard you talk about and have heard a lot of people talk about is the potential for jobs coming out of new forms of energy, out of what's been called, green jobs and renewable resources. Is there anything in this bill that you can do to encourage the development of those companies and the hiring of Connecticut workers?
Absolutely. First and foremost, there is a significant clean energy investment effort here in solar, in fuel cells, solar power, which is probably the one technology in Connecticut, in addition to fuel cells, that you don't hear that not in my backyard syndrome that we've recently heard about wind even.
Right, sure.
You don't hear many people saying, I don't want that solar panel in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
They employ a lot of people, from architects to landscapers to engineers to technicians. Those are behind the scenes. We see the results,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of bodies being put to work in that process. We're making a major commitment in this bill to grow a sustainable solar and clean energy economy in this state. And the second thing is, this is a leadership of the governor and Dan Estee, is to establish a clean energy fund attracting private financing.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yes, okay.
To further grow clean energy investments in Connecticut, putting people to work in our state, moving away from out-of-state, such a high reliance on out-of-state clean energy, wind and biomass up in Maine. We want people to be put to work here. We want more of our clean energy requirements to be built and powered here in Connecticut. And this bill will go a long ways towards beginning that.
So you'd be trying to attract private capital that
Yes.
could then energize the potential or provide the potential for these companies to actually establish themselves
Clean
here.
energy is above market cost, meaning if it were at the same level of brown energy, fossil fuel powered electricity, then you wouldn't need subsidies from ratepayers or from government.
Right.
But we're not there yet, and it's going to take more time. But until we get there, we're trying to find ways to reduce the cost. One way is to subsidize that, putting ratepayer dollars towards that. And we do that better than almost any state in the country. That's another reason why our rates are higher. Another